In today's video, I talk about the philosophy of periodizing your macro tracking.
My lingo, bingo, comprende, I'm not materialistic. My vision is seeping in, I see it like CNN. It's hard to describe it, I only view in the colors, no other choice but to move.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul from ProPhysique.com and I'm back in Tampa at my house. Had an awesome, amazing weekend in Toronto. I want to give a big shout out to the city of Toronto. I have never been to downtown Toronto. I've been to the suburbs, but we actually stayed on King Street in downtown Toronto, which is, it seemed to me to be the most happening area of Toronto. Like the King Street, there was like some nightclubs and bars and restaurants, and you know the Expo was a few blocks away, and Chinatown was a few blocks away. The Blue Jays baseball stadium was right there. The CN Tower, I mean, just phenomenal as far as the weather, how easy it was to get around. So yes, I know we probably got really lucky with good weather while we were there, but man, I really look forward to getting back to Toronto. We'll always take any opportunity to go to Toronto just for that reason. It was such a cool city. The food was fantastic. The people were fantastic. The expo was really nice. It was a bigger expo than I was expecting, but not so big that it was overwhelming where you can't actually get around, kind of like the Arnold. But overall, a fantastic weekend with Chad being there. Probably the best videos that have ever been on my channel. Definitely the best editing and work like that. But as far as the trip itself, just A+ across the board. Thank you, Canada, Toronto, all my friends, all my clients, everyone that was there for making it just amazing. And yeah, so had something on my mind recently, and I thought it would be kind of cool. So as you guys know, I'm back in school and we're studying strength and conditioning. And one of the principles of strength and conditioning is periodization. Well, it occurred to me that with periodization, you want to focus on different mesocycles, macrocycles, microcycles, or basically blocks of time where you're doing things a certain way to improve performance on a given time. And it kind of gave me the idea that we should be doing that with our diets, because as someone who went from never tracking macros, just kind of eyeballing food, to getting into contest prep where I tracked macros religiously every day for 6 months, what I found was I got burnt out of that. And as much as I would love to sit here and tell you guys that, you know what, you should track your macros every day, I don't believe that's true. I believe that there are periods of life where we should not track macros at all, where we should not be concerned with the numbers that we're eating from day to day, right? And that may sound a little bit confusing considering that I coach people and I tell them to specifically track their macros every single day and be very specific on their targets. So what I wanted to talk about was 3 different cycles of macro tracking and how that relates to our lives and what the end goal should be. I myself as a coach take people who have never really flexible dieted, never really tracked their macros, never really looked at what's in food, what makes it up, what macronutrients make up each individual item, and I take them and I coach them into the process of tracking macros. This is a life-changing thing for everyone that does it, especially if you come from one of 2 backgrounds. Either you never had any idea what was in food, or you were given a meal plan and told to hit these foods. These are magic foods that are going to help you reach your goals. The scenario with the meal plan where you're given foods to eat, what you start to see is you'll see a lot of changes in your physique and changes in the way your body responds, but you're not really educated on why it is. Because when you're choosing the options that are on the meal plan, you're getting less total calories. So you're basically creating a calorie deficit while also choosing foods that are higher in micronutrients, higher in fiber, just better overall sources for your goals, right? And if you've never tracked anything before and you go to a flexible approach, although it's called flexible dieting, it's not flexible for you because prior to that, you were in a place where you just ate intuitively, ate what you felt was good. Maybe you saw a story on CNN that something was healthy, so you included that in your diet, or you excluded something like fried food because you think that's bad, or maybe you stopped drinking soda because it has sugar in it. So those are the type of intuitive things. So what I want to talk about is tracking macros in different cycles and when we should be using those. And yes, I want to talk about when I feel like you should not track your macros, okay? So let's first talk about the most strict form of macro tracking. And that is, if I say hit 200 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs, 100 grams of fat on a daily basis, for a specific segment of the population, I want that to be as exact as possible, within a few grams of each and very consistently. So who are the people that I feel that this is most valuable for? This is going to be for my competitive athletes, competitive bodybuilders, bikini, figure, whatever it is that you're doing, maybe even for those that want to get into elite condition. You don't need to get on stage, but anyone who's choosing to get into elite condition, to better themselves in a way that requires going well beyond what the human body would normally do, this is where it is very, very important that we're very strict with our macronutrients, right? And I think what can happen is tracking macros can become another form of eating disorder. I've actually had clients call me crying because their protein was over by 3 grams one day, or their fats were over by a couple grams or under. What should they do? How do they fix this, right? And so I understand that tracking macros can itself become an eating disorder, can become psychologically damaging. But for the competitor who wants to manage and control every single thing they can during contest prep, I feel it's very important. But what happens sometimes is that once the competition is over, that can kind of carry over into day-to-day life. And now, just because you're not on a meal plan anymore, something happens with competitors, as many of you may know, that choose a meal plan, or even those who diet using a meal plan. There's a feeling of, if you go off plan, like if you eat one of the foods that isn't on that plan, so say there's 8 foods on that plan, you eat something off that plan, it's the effort approach. Okay, I went off plan, so I might as well just go way off plan. Well, there's kind of a similar thing with tracking macros where, you know what, I went off plan for tracking today, I went over or under on something, so guess what, the whole day can be screwed. What is better in that approach is understanding that flexible dieting doesn't revolve around a 24-hour window, it revolves around a 48-hour, 72-hour, a week window, right? So if you go way over one day, then you can kind of pull back a little bit of macronutrients over the next couple days. I don't want that to happen with my competitors, but if it does happen, it's a much better approach than psychologically checking out because you went off plan. Basically, with flexible dieting, the plan is much more flexible, a lot less rigid. Now, for high-level athletes, for people that are going to be competing at a very high level, want to get shredded, creating a meal plan with a flexible approach is the best thing to do, right? We want to plan ahead. We want to have our meals set out for a couple days, maybe a week in advance, cook in bulk, store in bulk, grab and go, be able to eat and plan ahead. That's for the competitor. For being a successful competitor, time management is going to ultimately be one of your most valuable resources. So that's the first approach. That is the strict, flexible dieting approach where you better be hitting your macronutrients bang on for days, weeks, months on end so that we can get you to that goal. Now let's talk about the next approach, the loose tracking, right? This is where I myself reside almost all the time, okay, unless I'm in contest prep, because I cannot track macros every single day. What I will do is I will track macros, set up a plan, and then stick to it, and then kind of check myself once, twice a week, log some things, see where I'm at, see how I'm feeling, check my weight. But overall, what I'm doing here is making sure I'm hitting my calorie range, I'm hitting my protein goals, spacing my meals out so I have lots of energy, I'm able to perform in the gym. This is the second type of tracking your macros, right? The second type of tracking macros is just about being aware. Now, in my opinion, to get to the place where you can be kind of self-aware, you have to go through the strict phase, right? So unless you are spending a lot of time tracking your macros for a couple days, a couple weeks, getting really familiar with looking at foods, ordering out, going places, and getting familiar with what's in the foods, it becomes very difficult to kind of regulate yourself on an eyeball, day-to-day basis I find people graze a lot during this phase. When I'm not being super strict, it's very easy for me to eat something out of my son's hand. Somebody doesn't finish the food on their plate, so I'll help them. These are the kind of things that when you're not being real strict, when you don't have that hardcore goal of a shoot, a stage, a wedding, whatever it is, that you're psychologically a little more able to like eat some things here and there that aren't on your plan, because you know what, at the end of the day, you're just being a little more loose. So these are the two phases that I kind of feel are important. If you're new to flexible dieting, you kind of need to be rigid for a little bit. Get strict, create meal plans. Then you can kind of transition into this phase where you're like, you're still tracking. If you're not familiar with something, you look it up on your phone. You're kind of calculating in your head all day. You'll look at a plate of food and you'll know, hey, this is about 40 grams of protein. This is about 30 grams of carbs. This is about 15 grams of fat. So I'll figure out kind of meal to meal where I'm going. And then most of the time, I'll still have a plan in place. I'll still have bulk cooked foods. I'll still have meals that I kind of go to regularly. I think as athletes, bodybuilders, whatever it is, anyone that's interested in nutrition, we tend to use the same meals over and over and get into patterns. And at least with myself, I find it just easier to do it that way. So if that's something you guys are doing, I'm a big fan of that. So we've got strict tracking. We've got the loose tracking, what I like to call just being aware, just being accountable, just not stuffing your face. And then let's talk about this third mode. And this is probably the most controversial and the toughest one for me to talk about, because it can be a little bit scary. And that is where I believe that we should not track macros at all. I believe we should not be concerned with writing things down or being accountable. Now, with that said, when you've gone through these first two phases, your life will never be the same. It's like the Matrix, right? Like once you've tracked macros and looked at foods for protein, carbs, fats, fiber, micros, once you've done that, it's kind of impossible to turn off your brain and go out to eat. I know even now, if I tell myself, I really want a burger and fries, in the back of my head, I know that burger and fries is going to have 80 to 100 grams of fat for a single meal. And that's hard for me to consume because I've had periods in my life where I've had, 40 grams of fat for an entire day, and I'm consuming double that in a single meal. So once you learn about foods, it's kind of hard to disassociate with the idea of knowing it. But here's where I feel like it's important. And I feel like it's important for a psychological reason, because if you can kind of disassociate with that, that is the end goal. Our lives should not revolve around tracking macronutrients every single day. Our lives should revolve around enjoying life. And food, being social, these are all very important parts of life. And so my goal as a coach is to give people the skills to survive without me, to be happy and successful without me. Now, I myself like to remove tracking, to not associate tracking food when I have things going on that are going to require my attention and I know it's going to stress me out. So one of the biggest things would be vacation, right? So on vacation, I get a lot of times people ask me, like, what should I do? I'm going on vacation. Well, it depends what the vacation is. If you're traveling to Europe, if you're going to Australia, if you're going overseas, if you're going somewhere you've never been before, I don't want you tracking macros. Unless you've got a competition lined up or something very serious going on that you need to be accountable for, I want you to enjoy the culture. Okay, I don't want you to look back in 20 years and go, I spent a week in this really cool place and I didn't try the food, but it was only because I had a eating disorder that I had to track my macros, right? That's not something I think is going to be healthy for any of us. So there are other times when tracking macros should just be unplugged. When you're going to a wedding, when you're going to social events, it all comes down to your goals. But I personally have to allow myself from time to time to just unplug from that. And it might be a short period. It might be a day, a weekend. It might be, a couple days of vacation. It might be an event that I'm going to where I just go, you know what? I'm going to be doing some drinking. I'm going to be having some fun with my friends. I'm going to be doing these things. And even at those times, I'll still, because I'm a bro, think I need to get a good protein source a couple times a day. I need to keep my protein up. But beyond that, there are times where I just need that ability to not track at all. And I think that allows me, when it comes time to flip the switch, when I say to myself, my goal is now to become the most shredded human being possible that I am capable of. When it's time for me to flip that switch, it's easy. I find it very easy for me to go, okay, I'm in macro tracking mode. Nothing around me tempts me because I know all these things are going to be there eventually. I'm not worried about going out to dinner with my family or sitting down, someone ordering a pizza. Sometimes people will say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm eating pizza in front of you. And I'll be like, why? It's my choice. I'm not upset about it. I can have pizza whenever I want. I have a strict goal right now that I'm focusing on. So it doesn't really bother me to be around people that choose to eat food that I wouldn't put on my diet just because that reason. Because I know I've been able to take these 3 periods and use them. And like I said, I stay in this zone of accountability 99% of the time. The only time I go strict is for contest prep, and I do that every couple years, right? And the only time I go off the rails and don't worry about tracking or being accountable in any way is if I just want to disassociate with the lifestyle for a few days. I might even take training off those days, right? So it just depends. And so I just wanted to give you guys my approval, not that you need it, but maybe make you aware that this is kind of what I as a coach suppose, this is what I as a person feel is most valuable for long-term success. I don't think that someone should track their macros every single day for the rest of their life. And I don't think that they should just eat whatever they want for the rest of their life. This middle zone is really what we want to focus on. This accountability, goal setting, and being realistic. And every once in a while, every couple days or weeks, I'll log in and I'll plug my food in for the day and I'll go, damn, why am I so low on protein? Damn, why am I so low on carbs? I kind of check myself occasionally and I stay accountable and I adjust something, I add something to the diet, I subtract whatever I need to do, and I move forward. And then when the time comes next year, when I get into contest prep, it's going to be right here. It's going to be literally hitting everything within a few grams every single day for months on end. And when that ends, I'm probably going to transition shortly into a period where I do no tracking, eyeballing, then back into accountability and setting some new goals. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me today. We're back in Tampa. It's Wednesday. Got to get to the gym. Got some client phone calls. Still behind on emails because yesterday became a cluster F. But I'm starting to get back in the groove. My man Chad's killing the video game. Today is going to basically be this video, very basic. Tomorrow's video, we'll do some training footage. I'm going to do a back trap, probably bicep workout. And I think Chad and I have decided we're going to do some like talking over the workout, like what the purpose of each movement is and what my kind of goal is. I think maybe that would be something you guys would be interested in. If you would like that, let me know below. As always, guys, have an awesome week. I appreciate all the feedback that I've been getting. And yeah, let's track macros the right way.